This time in the Magick Kitchen, we are joined by Madam Pamita to discuss Slavic witchcraft.
I'm Leandra Witchwood.
And I'm Elyse Wells.
And welcome to the Magick Kitchen podcast, where we talk about magic, kitchen witchcraft, herbs,
and everything in between.
As you may know, the Magick Kitchen podcast is fully and independently funded by the Witchwood Tea House. So show us some support and head over to thewitchwoodteahouse.com to purchase some deliciously hand-blended loose leaf teas or one of my other botanical products. As a special thank you for your support, please use pod 15 at checkout to take 15% off of your next order. So without any further ado, let's get to the episode. Blessed be. We're in May. I can't believe it's May already. And it has already been like, we're not even like a full, I don't know, we're just a full week into May recording this. And yeah, it's been so busy. I just got back from the Spoutwood Farm May Day Fairy Festival down at Rocky Point, Maryland. And I'm exhausted, but it was a great weekend. It was so wonderful. I got to meet some listeners. We got to chat, and I got to introduce people to my teas. I had never experienced my teas before. I even had some people come into the booth. They're like, "Oh my God, I've had you in my Etsy cart for like a month. I've got to get it now." It's kind of funny. Yeah, it's just hilarious how, it's such a small world. Mm-hmm. And it was a great experience. We all got to dress up and wear our cool hats and makeup and costumes and, hang out with the Green Man and the Green Lady, Rob and Lucy Wood, who have been running the Spoutwood Fairy Festival for, oh gosh, I think it's like 25 years now. I started volunteering and working the festival over 20 years ago. So it's got to be at least 25 years now. So wow. I'm recovering. I'm still exhausted, but yeah, totally worth it. I love seeing everybody and hanging out with everybody. And, now to get work on the Rebel Mystic community, where I have a bunch of things happening this month. We're working on Storm Magic and Nikavin, which she's an amazing character, I guess you could say, fae figure from Celtic mythology that is akin to Hecate. And she's considered the Celtic queen of the witches. So we're working with her this month. And yeah, and then I have my free Witchcraft for Beginners course, Crafting Clarity, available. Lots happening, and I love it. I'm so excited to see what the rest of this year has in store. I know you have a ton going on, Elyse. What's going on with you?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I just got back from Malta, and I won't harp on it too much, everybody, but if you have listened before, you know that I really love they're prehistoric Tarsian people of Malta. They have the most incredible sacred site I've ever visited called the Hypogeum, which is 4 stories underground, has never caved in despite Malta being the most bombed country in World War II, has never caved in despite Malta being along several fault lines in the Mediterranean, because these people worked with the living rock and they took like 1,200 years to carve this thing out so that it would never cave in, and it never freaking has. And that is so powerful to me. And it's just a mass cemetery that was used for ritual. So they would literally do ritual on the bones of their ancestors there. Like, the magnitude of it is just unreal. Yeah. And I got to go again this year. I went last year and it changed my life. And I went again this year. And I actually got to bring my mom. She came with me to Malta this year, and it was really special because she's been wanting to go as well. And it just worked out. She could join me. So, and I go for my guilty pleasure, which is the Regency period. So that's like 1790 to about 1820. And it was just this really liminal time in history where women had a lot of freedom, and the clothes show it because they're lower cut and they're simple. They were ironically inspired by Grecian looks, even though I can't picture a single Greek person ever wearing anything like that in history. And they were just flowy and comfortable dresses, and I feel so myself in them. So I love going to these kinds of events that allow me to be like really freely me. So it's really fun. And I love that I got to visit some sacred sites. And I want to share something that I've been musing on, and I'm still working this up. Maybe it'll be an Instagram post by the time you hear this, but I don't know. I really want to, it could be an article, it could be a whole book, but I've really kind of been thinking about how witchcraft is exercise. Like, we say that a lot, with that it's practical, that you have to do it for you to be a witch. It's not like you can call yourself a Christian and just have a simple belief in Jesus and call it done, right? But that's really not witchcraft. Right. Witchcraft isn't religion because it's not orthodoxic, it's orthopraxic. You have to do things to be a witch.
Yeah.
And I have been very intentionally building daily practice. Just nothing crazy. I mean, it takes me 5 to 10 minutes every day, but I do it every day. And it took me, if you're at a place where you don't want to do witchcraft every day, it might just be your altar. Because I had to extend my altar. I switched from a side table to a vanity, so about twice the size. And I suddenly want to live there. Like, it made a huge difference. So, witch tip, get a new space for your altar, because that could be it. That might be what's wrong. But I find myself, it started every morning. And at first I had to remind myself to do it. About a month into that, I found myself at lunch coming in just to say hi to everybody. I work from home, so I can do that blessedly.
Yeah.
And then now, even at night, I'm doing something. And some days I come in the middle of the day and I interact somehow. Like, I light incense, I use my singing bowl. And I also recently, and it does sort of coincide, picked up ritual drumming. I started lessons at a temple here called Meli Temple. Meli means honey in Greek. And the temple is run by 2 women. My teacher is Pollyanna, and they are bee priestesses. So the Melisai were an ancient Greek priestesshood that really was, we don't know the full details of exactly what their rituals were like, but they were priestesses of the land, because what are bees if not the heartbeat of the land? And there's a lot more that goes into this, and it's really fun because Leandra and I are both sort of on this journey of bees together.
We are.
Even across the ocean.
Yes, we are. And it's funny because we kind of found it together. Because I was like, hey, have you ever heard of this? And then you started doing a bunch of research. And, I'm this whole week recovering from Fairy Festival. I've been immersing myself in watching lectures and videos and stuff on bee shamanism and bee behavior. And I have a bunch of books in my in the mail right now, coming in the mail, that are on bee behavior, the democracy of bees and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a new journey.
And this drumming is really, what I didn't know at first was how drumming's connected to bees. I was like, that's weird. She loves bees and drums. But now I get it, because when you drum, and I'm working with a circular frame drum. So when you drum with one of these, you really are you have to hold space for the drum, literally, because it's big. You have to make it fit around your body. So that, just the way you have to hold it, wakes you up, because it gets you sitting with a better posture. It has you really focusing on, I want to say the word womb here, but you do not need a physical womb to have it. In fact, most women listening don't have a womb, because in my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, but the womb isn't an organ. It's a space that is created in you when you're carrying a child. So that womb is something we all can the cosmic womb, if we will, is something we can all access. And I never understood that until Pollyanna explained in our lesson that that's what the frame drum is. And she showed us pictures, and it all started clicking into place for me, that the Great Mother, to really put a broad stamp on that goddess energy of so many goddesses we know, Kybele, or she's spelled Cybele, so you might pronounce it differently. Even in Nana, they have this same energy. They're working with drums. They're working with snakes. They have the same symbolism. The drum is also the full moon. Anyway, it's a really long download filled experience I've been going through, but I really wanted to share that with listeners because it just feels like something that's resonant throughout the world right now. Like Leandra and I both picked it up separately and then realized we were on that same journey together. And then, and maybe it's because we talk about it around my phone, but I also have been seeing certain people that don't necessarily work with the land or with plants or with the fae, but they're also getting this call back to bees and drums and what that vibration is. And you know us, y'all, like we're not like high vibration, low vibration, but literally bees vibrate. Like that's what they do.
They do.
And
and one of the theories. And one of the theories of how the honeycomb is built is through that vibration, that their vibration creates that hexagonal pattern. It's, like how you put like salt on a speaker or on the table and they vibrate it and it creates these geometric patterns.
Right.
One of the theories, the woo theories, I suppose, is that because the communication of bees is through pheromone and through vibrating, that's how they create these honeycomb patterns. Like it was, I was like, ooh, I want to learn more about this. Like it's, I've got chills talking about it. But
is this in those Ariella Daily lectures?
Yes, Ariella. Yeah. So if you go to honeybeewild.com, Ariella Daily, we'll put the link in the show notes too. But she has all these lectures and classes you can take on honeybee wisdom. Yeah, it's so amazing.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the drumming. So in connection with bees, drumming is also associated with mycelial networks and plants. So it is believed, Paul Stamets talks about this, that how when we drum in nature responds. So it responds with a better harvest. It responds with agreeable rainfall. It responds with healthier plants. It's such an interesting thing how drumming, that emulation of the heartbeat, is so connected in so many different ways. Oh, I love this stuff. Like I'm getting all excited about it.
Yeah. Well, and so to bring it all back to what I was saying about daily practice, and then it becomes all day practice almost. Like I find myself like wanting to practice it more. I realized it, and I was just before we hit record, Leandra's like, save it. We gotta tell the listeners.
We gotta talk about this.
But it is like exercise. Witchcraft isn't just practice. It isn't just exercise, but it's a muscle. Your witchness is a muscle that you are growing every time you do witchcraft, no matter how small it feels. And you will start, because you're witchily fit. I was going to say like physically fit, witchily fit. I don't know. I'm trying.
Witchily fit. I like that. That's a new word.
Yeah, we're workshopping it, guys. But you get it. Like that place of, okay, like if you're somebody who does exercise, I've had periods of my life where I was in better shape than other times. Yeah. But I remember when I was like across the street from a gym and I would walk over for 2 hours a day. Like I remember feeling like I would see opportunities for physical activity that I don't think I would have seen otherwise. You know what I mean? Right. It's sort of the same with magic. Like because I got the daily stuff down, like I fully realized this last night at the new moon. We're recording this on May 8th, 2024. So right after the new moon in Taurus, which I'm a Taurus, so I really feel like I'm still buzzing.
You're really feeling it.
But my ritual was freaking awesome. I mean, there's no other word for it. It was so powerful and it was intuitive. I didn't even know what I needed to do until I was talking to a friend, who she's probably listening, and she was asking some advice, and I said, well, actually, career magic, it is good for tonight. And then I was like, huh. And then it hit me what I need to do. So, but I still didn't really prepare. I just kind of went in, went to the altar, and it, called in my deities, and it just led to where it needed to go. And it really felt like a reckoning of that. And not a reckoning, maybe a reaping of those seeds sown, and I think that's the energy of May and June as well, is that honestly all summer kind of has that energy of like, of that cycle of I did the thing, now I reap the benefit of the thing.
Right.
And you can keep repeating that cycle throughout the summer. And if you don't feel like you're there yet, if you're still in the building phase, it is coming this summer.
It's coming. Yeah. The more you flex, the more you'll get there. And a lot of people in the community, in the Rebel Mystic community, have asked me, like, how do you come up with all these rituals? Because we do a ritual every single month. And I created this worksheet. I have a few of them. One's a complete moon cycle worksheet, and one's just a regular ritual template that you can use. And it lays it all out, all the components that you might want for a ritual. And so what I instruct my students on doing that to flex that muscle, to build that muscle, is to use that worksheet. Eventually you don't need it anymore. Like it just comes to you, just like you were saying. And so I have my worksheets. I have it here. I don't use it anymore. I don't need to, because I know, okay, I want to feel this. I want to experience this. I want to call in this deity. I want to call in this energy. I'm using this plant, so I need to connect with this plant spirit. I already have an idea. And the rest of it, I think it's my intuition and spirit guiding me of what needs to happen, what needs to go into everything, and the process. And it becomes this less mentally taxing process and a more just fluid. And so, yeah, if you're interested in that worksheet, I'll think about how to get it to you for free. Maybe it'll be like a sign up thing. You can sign up for an email sequence, and I'll send it out there, or you can just join the community. It's a download in my courses. So, but yeah, I'll figure out a way to gift it to our listeners.
Yeah, that would be super helpful, I think, because it is about building the framework for yourself and then knowing that's where it's going to go, and you can work within it. And then before you know it, you're like, actually, I'm going to skip the invoking the elements for this one because I'm calling on, and you'll feel that confidence in knowing you can do that when you flex the muscle. And to speak to the other side of it, where you are doing the magic, but you're not feeling like it's working, but not for any real reason. Like, it's not like you're doing a huge manifestation that's not working. It's just, the zone. You can't seem to get in the zone. And I was thinking about this in regards to road opening spells. Road opening spells are like a category of spell for removing blockages on your spiritual path. And sometimes the best road opening spell is a spell you've done before and enjoyed. Because really all you need to do, if you feel blocked or if you feel like you're on a plateau, is keep doing it. Keep doing the magic. Like if you've had a health journey, I know I'm guilty of this, but there were times where I was, growing in like how much weight I was lifting and how many minutes I was doing this and whatever. But then I couldn't move for a certain point. I plateaued. And that happens to all of us in anything that we do that involves growth. And that plateau, unfortunately, the only way to get over it, to keep climbing again, is to keep walking, to keep going.
Keep up.
So just keep doing magic. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be crazy. It can be repeated. It can be the same exact thing every day. It can be never the same thing every day. But as long as you're still doing and you're still trying to connect, you will eventually feel that spark ignite itself again.
Yeah. And one of the things that I do on a daily basis, as long as the weather is agreeable, is walk in nature. And that's one of the most simple things we can do. And that's when I commune with the plant spirits, I commune with the land spirits, and it's just at my local park. It's nothing special. Everybody's, there's tons of people there. Like I've talked about this before, how I put my earbud in my ear and hold my phone out like I'm talking to somebody on the phone, but I'm talking to the land. I'm talking to the plants. I'm talking to the wind, the sun, the birds. And this is one of those practices you can do very covertly. And nobody needs to know what you're doing. Nobody has to know. It's none of their damn business, You're just minding your own business. You're not hurting anybody, but you're communing with that energy. And what I found over the years of doing this is when I'm in need and I go to these places, the answers come to me easily. It might not be right away. It might take a couple of visits. But if I go to these places and I ask those spirits, so maybe you do this in your own yard where you have more privacy, but I prefer to commune with the trees of my park for some reason. They seem to welcome me when I come to the park, and they recognize me. So that's the catalyst there, is that I have familiarity there. I can't talk. But yeah, when like getting that muscle flexed and making sure that you're connecting on a genuine level, not a demanding level, not an entitled level, but you're just genuinely like, hey, how's it going?
Mm-hmm.
Introduce yourself. Just be present.
And I really
you don't have to do anything. Yeah.
Yeah. I really do think it's sometimes as simple as, have you been outside lately? Because I know a lot of people that spend 48 hours, 72 hours, up to a week indoors, completely in their home. And if you work from home, you might not even realize that that's the case.
Yeah.
Like, maybe the trash only goes once a week. So other than, dropping it in the garage or whatever, like you don't really go outside. And that's the biggest thing, is to just, actually, that's something I'm sharing next month. I'm working on it now, but it'll be a June ritual for people to do every day, like to literally every day connect in nature. And it's something you can do on your walk to your car, or to go get the mail, or if you're, somebody who doesn't have to go outside, hopefully you'll convince yourself to do it. But
go outside.
But it's huge. It's so huge. And then it's so simple, but we've like literally the answer to a lot of our discontent is as simple as, we need to go outside.
Yeah. I agree. And here's another thought. So in flexing that magical muscle, sometimes it's putting on a piece of clothing or jewelry. Hear me out. So we have this animistic belief, right? We're practicing a witchcraft, shamanistic, mystical practice that believes in animism. So the things we wear, the things we hold dear, the pieces of jewelry, clothing, bracelet, whatever it might be, maybe even a hair clip. So I came to this realization after the Fairy Festival this year, because I was wearing all my fun Fairy Fest garb. So my cloak and my, corsets and bodices and that sort of thing that I don't normally wear in everyday life. I have some pieces of clothing that I just enjoy, and they're comfortable. So when I put those on, like, I'm in a different place. I am of a different mindset. And literally when I came home and had to put on my normal clothes, I felt that disconnect. I felt that like void growing between me and that magical side of myself. I mean, maybe that child, whatever you want to call it, the childlike self, the child self. But to me, it's my magical persona. So when I put on the cloak or the handkerchief chief skirts or the witchy hat with all the bird and the feathers and the flowers and that sort of thing, like there's definitely a switch that happens. Yep. So maybe if you're feeling stuck and you're feeling unmotivated, find a piece of clothing, find a piece of jewelry, a hair clip, or even a hairstyle that brings you into that space. Yeah. And that's part of flexing that muscle and working that muscle, is to bring yourself into that space. It might even be just lighting a candle or holding a key, or I don't know, like anything that you have in your vicinity that helps you feel more magical. Hey there, witches. Did you know that there's an entire community out there dedicated to you and your journey? The Rebel Mystic community is a space where I offer my decades of knowledge and experience to witches just like you. I do this through live events, monthly mentoring, monthly rituals, a book club, and other resources like workbook pages and meditations. There is even a complete self-paced course library you can access. Check the link in the show notes to learn more about this community and how to become a member. Blessed be.
Madame Pamita is a Ukrainian diaspora witch, teacher, author, candlemaker, spellcaster, and tarot reader. She has a popular YouTube channel for teaching witchcraft, and she hosts 2 podcasts, Baba Yaga's Magic and Magick and the Law of Attraction. And she is the author of Baba Yaga's Book of Witchcraft, the Book of Candle Magic, Madame Pamita's Magical Tarot, and, newly, Cancer Witch. She is also the proprietress of the online spiritual apothecary, The Parlor of Wonders, and lives in Santa Monica, California. You can find her at parlorofwonders.com, and parlor with the U. I like that touch.
Because to be honest, yeah, I was going to say, to be honest, it's the only reason they use there because the no you was taken already by a magician. Had a thing called,
gosh, the other kind of magic.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I made it fancy.
I like it. Well, thank you very, very much for being here. It's really exciting to have somebody on to talk about Slavic witchcraft and largely, I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a very folksy practice. It's not ceremonial, it's not highbrow, it's for everybody. And I really appreciated that. It felt accessible. And as somebody with Greek heritage, and I am Greek in this life too, it's really nice to see the connections and the cultural diffusion. The Balkans are so comfortable with each other. I guess that's always how I see it. Like we're all brothers and sisters. So it was a very cozy read for me. And I think anybody with any Slavic heritage would really benefit from reading this book. It answered so many questions I didn't know I was missing the answers to.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. This, speaking of that mix, there's so much crossover just in Eastern Europe because there was tons of trade in Eastern Europe. So we find practices in folk magic actually that correspond to one another and have analogous, parts that translate really between lots of Greek influence because Greeks were coming up into the lands where Ukraine, like southern Ukraine, would be. And we find that the Greek writers, thank goodness for the Greek writers, because we wouldn't have a lot of the information that we have without them documenting what they encountered. So we have an interesting thing, the Greeks wrote about the Amazons, right? The Amazons were warrior women who rode on horses and fought fiercely. We think that the Amazons that they were writing about were actually the Scythian women warriors who were in Ukraine at that time, who were fighting alongside the men and were riding horses. So it's interesting that connection between cultures, because there was so much trade, exploration, and so on. We find, all throughout Europe, there's crossover. Even things, you can even look at analogous things between Celtic magic and Slavic magic, because the Celts, we think of the Celts as being in Ireland and Scotland. Maybe we think of the Gauls being down in France and so on. But actually, their origin point was kind of Eastern Central Europe, and they spread east and west. It's just that they took hold as they went far, far, far west. That's really where they settled and stayed. But their influence really extended east and west. And the part of Ukraine that my grandparents were from was actually called Galicia at that time, Halichna in Ukrainian. And Galicia, not to be confused with the Galicia in Spain, although, again, a connection. You think of the word Galicia, Gaul, it's Celtic land. So we find so much crossover, so much magical influence, both historically, archaeologically, and magically as well. So if you're from Greece, if you're from, the Baltic states, if you're from, you practice Celtic magic, you're going to find things you're going to be like, oh, we do. In Italian magic, you're going to find things that are, wait, we do that too. So.
Yeah. Oh, it's so powerful, actually. And it adds so much strength to the workings to know that it's so, widespread. And it's widespread not only out of tradition, but because it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So connected.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Actually, my favorite cross-cultural, ubiquitous sort of idea is the evil eye. But I liked how you sort of, in your book, in Baba Yaga's Book of Witchcraft, you're differentiating between I'm going to work on this pronunciation. Roki and Brikinia.
Yes. Yeah. Perfect. You did a great job. All that
thank
Greek.
you. Exactly. I was telling Leandra before we started, we were talking about the challenge of some of the words in the book. I said, I'm just going with like my Greek vocab, like our lettering is pretty similar to Cyrillic. So
yeah, exactly. If you say it with a Greek accent, you're going to be 90% of the way there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's an idea of evil eye versus cursing, which is actually makes total sense, because the idea of the evil eye is that someone looks at you with an envious or covetous glance, right? This is why we find these old practices of people like, oh, I don't want to show my children to strangers, my baby to strangers, because babies, first of all, are spiritually vulnerable. There's real vulnerable times between the time a baby would be born and in post-Christian times, the time the baby would be baptized. That little expanse of time would be super vulnerable. It's a liminal time. Liminal times are times when we are vulnerable, where we have more access to magic, both good and bad. So a liminal space, you'd want to be super protective. So evil eye would be something that people look at what you have and they're like, oh, it's beautiful. Oh, your baby's so beautiful. But deep in their heart, they're like, why isn't my baby this beautiful? Or why don't I have a baby? Or how come, whatever. So the evil eye energy doesn't necessarily come from an ill-wishing person, right? You can be covetous of something and not be ill-wishing, but the the covetousness, the desire or the envy, will have a negative effect, right? Very, very different from cursing. Cursing means I actively want to send you bad. I want to send something bad to happen to you. So, protecting against the evil eye would have a different, or removing the evil eye would have a different, perhaps a different set of rules or different, methods than somebody actively cursing you. You want to be protected from both, of course, but one comes from a place of malice and the other one comes from a place of just covetousness or wanting something that someone else has. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that distinction is harder for folks who are only familiar with Western traditions of magic because, and actually, I learned this in The Witch by Ronald Hutton. He talks about why witch trials weren't in the Balkan states. Why weren't Greeks burned at the stake? And he said it's because of this understanding of the evil eye. They understood that it was almost always unintentional, even if somebody did have a gift for it. Like I always say, my grandmother would never call herself a witch, but she has the unbelievable talent of sending the evil eye to somebody. Like she just can like predict things. And so she sends evil eye in the same way. And like, this is why I think the West is more focused on protection magic, because we think there's like malicious intent and we need to be prepared and defensive. But really, it's just this understanding that sometimes we don't mean to, but we think a thought and then it happens. And that's where it can be, dangerous. And so just covering your bases with protection magic and amulets and all the ways. I mean, there's yeah, exactly. I have mine on my ankle. I just always have an evil eye on.
Yeah, I was pointing while Elyse was talking, I was pointing to my amber necklace that I wear. Like I wear amber because amber is like there's two, one might sound more familiar for Greeks is coral. Coral is a super big amulet for protection. Italian magic, coral is super huge. Why? Because it came from the Mediterranean, but people traded. And so even in these landlocked areas of Ukraine, we find coral necklaces very, very expensive, very valuable. And, this beautiful red Mediterranean coral. So, but amber, which comes up from the Baltic countries, Lithuania and so on up there, you'll find Poland, you'll find amber in those areas. And so amber is also, and so my family, amber was more of the thing than coral, although I have coral jewelry as well. And just the color red. Oh my gosh, we could talk about red eggs. Greek red eggs,
Yes.
About red eggs?
Exactly. That's on my little list of synchronicities. I wanted to ask, what's the significance of red? Why red?
Well, I think we find red eggs. So red eggs in Ukraine are called krashanki, which means hard boiled, which basically designates them as different from pesunki. Pesunki are written on. They're talismanic eggs that you write. The word pesunki comes from the word pisati, which is to write, right? So you're writing and inscribing these eggs with symbols, but those eggs are raw eggs, and they are not cooked, and they are not eaten. And eventually either the yolk and white desiccate after a couple of years, and then it becomes dry on the inside. Or sometimes now in the diaspora, people started poking holes in the eggs and blowing out the insides and making their pesunki that way. But krashanki are hard-boiled eggs, which are dyed red. The red color represents the life force, right? When in color magic in Eastern Europe, red was seen as, it makes sense. It's blood, it's fire, it's passion, it's life force, right? So there's tons of fire magic and water magic in Slavic magic, and that red represents that fire energy. So if you were coming out in springtime and you're making these red eggs to distribute to your friends to eat, you're taking in the energy of that life force, right? Spring is coming back. Life is coming back. Vigor is coming back. You got to be strong because you got to farm those fields. So these red eggs were emblematic of the season, and games are played. Like, this is the other thing I saw as well, is that we all do this game of tapping the eggs. Did you do tapping the eggs?
Yes.
In Greece?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, do you usually win?
Nah, I'm probably 50-50. I get a little too excited sometimes, and I, go a little too much gusto. I'm a competitive person. So
it's so much fun. It basically, for those listening, you stand in a line, everybody has a hard-boiled egg, and you crack on top of the next person's, and if you win, whoever wins goes to the next person. So if you win, that means your egg is the strongest. Yeah. And I usually win. And here's my strategy. I will share my strategy. So I always tap with the bottom of the egg, like the wider part. And I hold it with my hand, fully in my hand, so that the shock will hopefully be absorbed by my hand. And then I like to think witches have a higher chance of winning anyway, because we can connect to that life spirit. We're connected to that. So I literally I don't spend hours with this, it's half a minute or something, but I'll just kind of hold my egg and just be okay, look, here's what we're going to do. And I just tell it, can we win, please?
So that's it. You're doing magic. I play fair, even the playing field. I don't do any magic on my egg other than, the magic you would do.
Lisa's cheating.
She's using her magic. Of course she's going to win. So we this is something that is, kind of universal in the Balkans, and, Croatia, you go all the way up to Poland and east, of course. I don't know if they do it in Russia, but probably, this is a pretty ubiquitous practice, and such a fun one. And it is, often done with the krashanki, which are dyed red. By the way, the red dye comes from onion skins, yellow onion skins boiled in water. That was going to be
my next question. Where does the red dye come from? Because I see some similarities in Celtic traditions too with the eggs. Especially, we would poke the holes and blow out the inside before we would decorate them. But my mom would take the eggs and she would take off just the top of it. And then we would fill them with wishes. And then she would take a piece of tissue paper or a piece of vellum and seal it again. And then we would go outside and crush them. So it was a slightly different, I guess, intentional thing, but the color red, again, it shows how connected we are. The color red was very important because that was the symbol of life, of blood, of existence. And I always had trouble with that when I was learning Wiccan traditions, because they kind of take that lifeblood essence out and replace it with the pastels and green and that sort of thing. So I'm glad to hear you talk about that.
Yeah. So it's I mean, if you talk about like the Celtic and Slavic crossover as well, there's there's a huge crossover in like how ancient Celts and ancient Slavs celebrated in animistic times before gods, goddesses, and so on, or at the let's say the very dawn of that belief system. And we like them worshiping in groves, like druids, like Celtic druids would worship in groves. Oral traditions, nothing is written down. Everything is told in story. I don't know that they had the druid. We don't know because we don't have any documentation of it. If there was a practice like the druids of memorizing the histories and doing all of that. But it wouldn't surprise me because things weren't written down. So if things aren't written down, how do you transmit, advanced cultural information? It's through oral tradition. We find it in stories. And I think one of the things I can tell anybody from any culture, if you want to find out the magic of a culture that has been decimated or that has been, like I almost think of like, in some ways, so much of Slavic culture it's not the problem for the Greeks. Greeks have all their stuff written down, but for cultures where there's been, over imperialism, colonialism, and all of these things where they take away your traditions, you can still find those traditions. And where you find them is in your folk tales and your fairy tales. Because if your belief system is outlawed, which is the reality for Slavic people, even as recently as the 20th century, religion was outlawed. So then all of your things that got blended with your religion, your current religion, will be outlawed. If you look to the fairy tales and the folk tales and the stories, you will find the clues. So Baba Yaga is a great example of that. The stories about this old witch in the woods actually really talk about the spirit, the protective spirit, the goddess, the spirit of the woods, who she really was. She wasn't an evil ogre. Those are later stories where she's an evil ogre. She's an initiator. She's a tester. You go into the forest and you have to get the puzzle right, or you have to achieve the goal that she sets out for you, and then you'll get rewarded. And if you're lazy or stupid or don't accomplish the goal, weak and not courageous, then you won't get the reward. So we can see in the older stories a different version of her, rather than this ogre that just goes around like the witch in Hansel and Gretel, just eating children. That's just later. That's what sort of bad propaganda will get you. So
yeah. And actually, I wanted to ask you, as an author, it was really moving the way that you formatted this book. Each chapter starts with a exploration of an initiate, of a human, just like us. Vasilina, I think, is how you might say her name. And it introduces a new element that the chapter will discuss. But then you have Baba Yaga teach you first. How did you get the idea to speak through Baba Yaga like that? Like, how did she come to you? And if you're comfortable sharing that in the process of writing.
Yeah, I'm totally comfortable. So, I am a devotee of Baba Yaga. I work with her all the time. I do vision journeys with her. So she's very much, like I say, she's like an Olympics coach. If you're an Olympics coach, you would think, people think, I see lots of other devotees, and some people say, well, don't get involved with her. She's tough. Or they might give some prohibition, but they're not, and they're not lying. She is tough, but it's more like an Olympics coach tough. So if I say, hey, Leandra, I'm going to make you, I see your potential. I think you can be an Olympics gymnast and win a gold medal. I'm the coach. But do you want to win the gold medal? Yes or no? Do you want to put in the effort? Yeah. And if you do, you're going to be here 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, working your butt off for the next year and a half or 2 years so that we can get you to a gold medal. You might, if you're like me, you might be like, oh yeah, let's go for it. I want a gold medal. I want a gold medal. I want to do that. And then, 3 months into it, when you've been working 10 hours a day, what are you thinking? Screw my coach. Why am I doing this? My coach is so mean. This is horrible.
I've been an initiate, so I understand that fully.
Oh, exactly. Initiation sucks. But we have to understand what initiation is. It's not somebody just like, we're going to make Leandra work so hard. This is so...
Let me screw with you for a minute.
Exactly. It's not hazing. She doesn't haze people. That's hazing. That's a different thing.
Yeah, that is different.
This is actually seeing the potential in you, work, because if they didn't, an Olympics coach would not work with you if they did not see that you had that magic something that could win the gold medal, right? So when you work with these, I think, dark goddesses or, from lots of cultures, you're going to have a real, and in particular for her, she is an initiator. So initiators are going to be tough on you because not only do they want to see, are you ready to be initiated? Because that's part of the process. But they want you to see that you are ready. They want you to be confident. And if you go through boot camp, you will feel confident at the end, not like you were at the beginning. You will feel ready to go into battle. You will feel ready to meet the challenges that life has to give you. You will have that something because you went through the hard thing. So going back to your question, like how she came to me and how this format came to me, I was really struggling at the beginning of the book because my original format was nothing like this. I was like, how do I introduce people to Baba Yaga if she is unknown to them? So I was like, okay, I'll write a chapter about her at the beginning so people get a vibe for who she is. So I wrote her in a way that she would be woven into the story, and it was a download. So then I was like, how do I explain all these stories to people? And then I had the true gift of inspiration of saying, oh, I can bring a story in that exposes these ideas, that puts people in the story so that they understand what it's like to meet her, so that they understand the experience. And then let her tell what the old ways were. And then me, Madam Pamita, I'll just come in and I'll give some spells, bring it up to date. How can you do this in your modern life when you don't live on a farm and don't have a well next to your house and all of these, and a big wood stove and all of these things. So that really was totally inspired. And I feel like that is a gift from her. She wanted to speak. She wanted to be heard. She wanted people to get to know her. And as a result, I feel like the book itself is an initiation. You are Vasilina. You are going on the journey and you are uncovering all of this magic. And at the end, spoilers, if you don't want to know what happens at the end of the book, Vasilina becomes a witch. So it's your initiation into witchcraft, which is tough. You got to be smart. You got to be resourceful, and she's rewarded for her bravery, her resourcefulness, her intelligence, problem solving. That's how she gets rewarded. So it's Baba Yaga saying who is worthy of taking on the mantle next. And she gives her that. So.
Real talk. Leandra and I could be trying to sell you socks or a VPN or that cereal everybody talks about, but we like to keep it witchy around here instead. And we can only do that because of the support of listeners like you. When you're joining my magical living community on Patreon, you're not only getting weekly shadow work journal prompts, new moon and full moon rituals, exclusive videos, exclusive meditations, plus bonus episodes of the Magick Kitchen podcast, but you're seriously keeping the lights on in the Magick Kitchen. Thank you for listening and reviewing the show. And if you're ready to meet me in the Magick Kitchen, pop over to patreon.com/Elyse Wells and start your free trial. Let's deepen your magical practice together.
But talk a little bit about hair magic in this context.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, if we look at all of this magic, it really has to do with your day-to-day life, which is really how I like to practice magic. It's part of interwoven into my life. It's not like something I do on a, only on a full moon or something like that.
Yeah,
it really is, it's who I am, and it's a part of my life. So, one of the things that we talk about is hair magic. There's tons and tons and tons of hair magic. We have to also remember a lot of it is, going back to, gendered sort of things. So your hair was super, super important, particularly if you're a woman. Although I can say for Ukrainian guys, in going back to, even just 100 years, your mustache would be like a big deal, like you see like these big bushy mustaches on the Cossacks. And actually the hair magic, I'll throw in one thing. There are special hair things for guys as well, because the Kozaki, the warriors who were not going to be serfs anymore. You have to understand serfdom, which was kind of an early medieval thing in Western Europe, existed long later, much, much, much later in Eastern Europe and in Ukraine. This was farmland. And so, there would be landholders and people working that land for just, subsistence living, right? So it wasn't quite slavery, but it's only, really just a step up from that is serfdom. So there were these Cossack warriors who were in the steppes, who were kind of like, I would call them Ukrainian cowboys, but that's not quite right, but you can get the idea. And they were warriors who were like, no, we're not going to have any lords. We're going to be democratic. We're going to, band together and we're going to work collectively. So they had special hairstyles, one called the chub, which means herring, like the fish. And it's a little kind of a top knot piece of hair on top of the head, like a little, just a little thing. And the rest of the head would be shaved, right? This little piece of kind of almost like a little mini mohawk, but flop down on the side, not sticking up, right? So there was magic around hair, and for men as well, and the mustaches, of course, as well. For women, the hair was a point of it's almost like it's the place where you can sense magic, or you're vulnerable. Again, like your hair can be a very magical thing. And so if it's a magical thing, it's also vulnerable to magic or to negativity as well. Mm-hmm. So in, let's say, the post-medieval times, for sure, post-medieval, I think prior to that, during pagan times, women wore their hair loosened down. But then there came this kind of idea that you have to cover your head or you have to braid your hair. So for young unmarried women, putting their hair in braids, but letting their hair show was acceptable. For married women, and older women, if you were unmarried and older, you would still do the same thing. You covered your head with a scarf or, had the head covered. That's why we see that like traditional babushka with like a scarf on her head, right? So this practice was like your hair was kind of made you vulnerable. So let's keep it under control, right? So it was so strict in the old days. And I mean, old days only maybe 150 years ago, that if you were walking around with your hair untied in some way, you were either a crazy person, a witch, or a spirit. It was not done. It's like walking down the street in a bikini. You wouldn't walk down the street. People would be like, what the heck, right? It's inappropriate. So the same thing would be true of hair. So that's why we see the real images of Baba Yaga with her hair loose, because she was magical and she was a powerful witch. And if you're powerful, you don't need to have the protection. She's not worried about picking up something negative because she's so powerful. But also when we talk about Slavic spirits like the Rusalki, who are the water nymphs, they would be beautiful young women who lived in the water, come out and bring fertility to the land and so on. They would also have their hair down. And so if you saw a beautiful young woman and you're like, you have your hair down, I need to stay away from you because you're either crazy, don't want to deal with it, or you are a rule breaker, a like first class rule breaker, or you're a spirit or a witch. And so, yeah, hair is really important. It's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, even now, like my grandmother, if I go to her house with my hair down, she will be like, "Oh, you weren't out like this, were you? Why are you out like this?" Like, and I've had, only happened twice, but I've had 2 times in my life where older women stop me. And in Greece, we have this thing where like you spit to allay the evil eye. So they don't really spit, but they go, "Ftu, ftu."
Yes.
And it's happened to me twice where they touch my hair and they go, "Ftu, ftu." And my hair is very long. It's part of my spiritual practice to not cut my hair. I do trim it once or twice a year, but either myself or my aunt, who is also of the witchy persuasion and very aware of like the importance of what I'm doing. So my hair is like past my butt. It's like super long. So people always notice it. And like the old ladies are like afraid for my life. Yeah. So I really do wear it braided almost all the time.
I used to have a braid and I kept it going for a long time. And then I went through some very rough stuff this past fall. My son, who's now fine and well, had a cancer diagnosis. It was really hard. He's adult. He had,
oh my gosh.
and so we had to go through chemo. He had to go through chemotherapy. I didn't go through chemotherapy, but I was with him at his side. And so cutting my hair at winter solstice was like okay, I really want a fresh start. I want to and that's another practice. Like if you want to get rid of some old stuck energy, is a haircut, right? If you had something really that you don't want to deal with again, get a haircut. So this idea of growing your hair is super magical. I mean, I think of, even in some Native American traditions, the idea that the hair is almost like your whiskers of a cat, like that pick up the energy. We have, I can't unfortunately remember what culture specifically it comes from, but there's a culture, a Native American culture that has this idea that the trackers need to have all their senses, and they would have their hair long. And they did this in Vietnam War. They hired these really adept trackers, but they shaved their heads and they weren't as effective anymore. So they made a dispensation for these young men who were trackers to be able to grow their hair long so that they could do their job of tracking as part of their, work during the Vietnam War. So,
wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, this is again a cross-cultural belief that shows up. And so the idea that your hair has a magical power and you do specific special things to your hair for reasons, not just, I feel like this or I feel like that. So, yeah, so and the spitting thing, yeah, totally Eastern European too. I don't know if go ahead.
I was gonna say it sounds so gross, but they're not really spitting. It's just the ftu. It's the energy of spitting.
Yes, they're getting rid of. It's like you're on the go. Like if you don't have an evil eye charm or tools or anything, it's like you're on the go way of getting rid of negativity right then and there. I don't know if you guys watch what we do in the shadows, that show. There's a character who's
I'm way behind.
Oh,
I'm like season 1.
They might not. Well, they have a character on there, Nadja, who's like vaguely, we don't know, is she Balkan? She could be Balkan. She could be, we don't know where she's from exactly, but somewhere definitely like Eastern Europe, Balkan area, something like that, right? And she'll do the, she'll do the spits and I'm like, yeah, it's a thing.
I love that. When you think of it, it's maybe this is me just like, I love Dune, and in Dune, water is life, and they don't have water on Arrakis. So that's the whole, as a spiritual person, like it gives you a lot to think about. And I feel like the spitting kind of comes from the same place. Like you're giving water for that person. You're taking your purest essence, because spit, bodily fluids, these, we don't like to talk about as much as hair. Hair sounds romantic and lovely, but it is all our essence, it's our truest self. So it's kind of nice. Like it makes me feel held in a way, like when an old woman has the impulse to protect you, or like when somebody has a new baby and the whole room erupts with like, it's just so nice. It's just nice.
Exactly. I love it. I mean, I'm for sure a folk magician. I'm low magic folk magician. I just really connect to ancestors. I connect to ancestry, and having all of these discoveries as I was researching this book was just, it was like, I always say it's like Aladdin coming into the Cave of Wonders. That's what it felt like for me, really discovering and finding and picking up a thread of like something my mom had told me about my grandmother, and then actually finding out what that was, because my mom we did magic, although it was super Catholic magic, it wasn't.
Yeah.
I'm like, doesn't everybody do this?
They're like, oh, this is Orthodox, It's like, okay, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So finding all these threads for all of these practices, it's just always a delight for me. I teach classes of all kinds. I teach general magic classes and workshops online and all of these things, right? And this year I'm dedicating my first Sunday's witchcraft workshops to Slavic magic. And so each time I teach the class, I go a deeper dive, because these are things that I either kind of know about, but I always look and research and find out more. And it always is just a delight to find out new practices that I didn't know about, new research holidays, and really reclaim this stuff. I mean, I think the interesting thing is like, different cultures have different experiences. Greek culture, beautiful. I mean, I am always thankful to the Greeks for writing things down, because if it weren't for those ancient civilizations that wrote things down, we'd have even less information than we have. And we can find those analogous things like the red eggs. If I can find something about the red eggs, a little thread, and then I can confirm it, because the Greeks have written up really extensively about it. And there's a great continuity. One of the fortunate things is for Greek people is that there's a continuity. You have really that belief system with no interruption. I mean, people change and they became Orthodox and all of that. But in terms of like history and knowing, Greece has never, except maybe during the Ottoman Empire, has never been really like colonized, right?
Yeah. We had that 400 years under the Ottomans, but even through that, like Greece is just so rural. Even to this day, it's like the bane of my existence, because I live an hour outside of Athens and nobody else does. I mean, like, people do, but like everything's in the city, because there's just not enough people for it to be worth having a dentist, somewhere else. So it's even then, like, I think the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church, these like tenets of power for major parts of the world, they did a very good job of making us think that we've been conquered. You know what I mean? Like they told us, no, you've been conquered. And for the most part, we've believed it. Like witchcraft is having its resurgence. Folk magic is even more recently having its resurgence. And, we're realizing that we've kind of been fed propaganda that it died, because the more and more I read, and I'm sure you found this too, like the Christians also were practicing magic, throughout the Middle Ages, especially. The more rural you got, the less Christian you got. And maybe they call her Mary now, but it's still Baba Yaga. Like it's, right. It's powerful.
Yeah. Well, they have there's a whole thing of like, I call it like, well, I just did a thing on the spring holiday cycle. So everything is around spring equinox, the big holiday of the year, because this is the time when snows go away. This is the time your agricultural year begins. It was the new year up until the 1400s. It was the new year was March 1st, right? So the holidays around that have all these saints that, this is Saint so-and-so's day. This is Saint so-and-so's day. And you have all these little holidays leading up to the big, great day, which is Easter, right? But you look at the practices and you're like, that has nothing to do with Jesus and Easter and it has resurrection energy, but why? Because the Christians came in and they're like, oh, you're celebrating the resurrection of life. Hey, let's put Jesus's death day around this. But we will make it align. We'll make it align with the cycles of the moon, so it'll always be on a different day every year. But I mean, it's like, why is it on a different day?
Because a lot of Christians don't understand that. They don't. I was just listening to someone in the store talk about Easter and how it's so early this year. Why is it so early? I'm looking at them like, how do you not know why? They don't teach them why. They just say, hey, okay, it's this day. They don't explain to them that it has to do with the moon cycle and the
So this I think things are, if you just pull off that little thin veneer of Christianity, you find all kinds of folk magic practices that have been subsumed and integrated. And this is a real hallmark of Slavic belief, which is called, I didn't really mangle this word, dvorovi, which is double faith. You believe all your folk magic spirits and all of that stuff, but you can also be Christian at the same time. This is how I was raised. We had all kinds of magical beliefs and all kinds of things that were super pagan, but we just kind of like slapped some Christian whatever over top of it. And then it was like, fine. So I look at these old incantations. We have another place that you can really find old magic is in songs, and especially in Slavic lands. If you look at these old songs, it'll be like, I welcome the sun. I welcome the 77 sister stars. I do this, I do that. Oh, and Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. And then I'm talking about the spring and the flowers and they're talking about the birds and the nature and everything around them. And the spirits of these things in very magical ways. The living sun, the sun that they worshiped is there. And then they're just like, okay, we'll throw little Saint Ilya in there. We'll throw little Saint so-and-so in there, and then it'll be fine. It's fine.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Saint Elias here. It's the same. They're like, oh yeah, Helios. I mean, Elias.
Exactly. We have the same thing. Saint Ilya rides across the sky in his chariot. Where have we heard that before, right?
Who does that?
So... yeah. So it's like if you just look if you just peek under the skirt a little bit, you'll see it all,
So I feel like we would be remiss to talk about Ukraine in any way without acknowledging the fact that we've been at war for I literally can't believe it's still going on. 2 years. I remember it vividly because, of course, in Greece, like we see Ukraine as like our sister country. The Balkans all really do see each other as siblings. And I remember distinctly it was during Lent. And that was what blew the gasket for Greeks. They were like, how can Putin do this during the holiest time of the year?
Right.
And I still am just every day I'm sending energy to Ukraine. It's very, I really think it's ridiculous the way the West just like moved on. And it's no one individual's fault. It's the news. It's the media's like just neglect,
Oh, I think it's more insidious than that, but yes.
Yeah. But I mean, like, it's not like the individual listener out there who's like, oh crap, you're right. I'm not sending energy to Ukraine anymore. Like it's by design that they've kind of let you forget about it. And I have to say, I'm grateful that like here it hasn't been forgotten. Like people talk about it all the time. Like my dad is very Greek Orthodox, and like he told me that the church prays for Ukraine in every service. Like it was frustrating when I was back in the States, and like people literally asked me, they're like, wait, that's still going on? They had no clue.
We are so clueless out here. We really are.
Well, I mean, yeah, we got some big fish to fry in the States, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But what I mean, if we look at it really, I think Russians are terrible. I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about the government. The government is terrible at conquering countries because of a lot of systemic stuff. Their plan was they were going to take Kyiv in 3 days, and here we are 2 years later. So, but one thing that they are very good at is interfering with elections with propaganda. Now they have access to news media, and really, where do people get their news? From social media, from any random person. Mm-hmm. And all you need to do is just put out some chaos agents that are spreading lies and disinformation and all of that and creating chaos. I can tell you with confidence that Putin had some hand in what is going on in Gaza, because if this creates chaos for Democrats here, then guess who gets into office? His buddy, his best buddy gets into office. Mm-hmm. So this idea that we think that we are having the truth. Oh my gosh, social media is a hot mess. It is a hot mess. And this is why we have nothing about Ukraine in the news, because if there's this dissent that we're not now sending, guess what? He wins. He gets, or at least it gets a delay in the inevitable victory of Ukraine because this is. So I think it's more, I don't think it's just that Americans are not interested or bored. There's a little bit of that. Mm-hmm. You know, people move on to the next thing. What's the gossip? What's the this? And they move on. That's human nature. Sticking with something for a long time can be boring. It can feel frustrating. And I think for Americans in particular, we like when I get things resolved. And so if we can't resolve them, if they're complicated, if it's more than, a couple of months or something, they're like, whatever, right? They give up. So I think that there is something that's really, we have to get out and vote. We have to be, vet what information that we're sharing. And we also have to amplify Ukrainian voices. So if you want to do something for Ukraine, and I'm advocating like for people, do one thing for Ukraine every day. That can be following a Ukrainian creator. That can be liking or commenting on something to put them higher up in the algorithm. That can be looking for good news sources. And if anyone's interested in finding those good news sources, where do I go? What do I look? You can go into the people that I follow, which are all these news sources that some are in Ukrainian, but some are translated into English. Many are translated into English. Just go and follow and like. Put a Ukrainian flag sticker on the bumper of your car, or I have like Ukrainian flags hanging outside my house. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can do to show support. Go on Etsy and buy things from Ukrainian creators. You can type in. So if you want to help the people, you can do that. I also every week, I do a fundraiser for seniors in Ukraine. There's severe food insecurity for all people in Ukraine, except for, really young working people, but for many people, there's great food insecurity. And I have a friend who started a grassroots organization where this team of people, half dozen people, buy groceries. $40 buys 2 weeks worth of groceries, of healthy food, some proteins and, grains and things like that, and delivers them to these seniors, many of whom who are handicapped, housebound, disabled, and can't work because they're in their 70s or 80s. They come and deliver this food. Sometimes they deliver the food. There is not even a crumb in the house when they deliver this food. But giving them that 2 weeks of food once a month can extend so they don't have to make the horrible decision of, do I have food or do I have heat in the winter? Do I have food or do I have my medicine? It gives them a little bit of relief, and they really, really count on it. So I do tarot readings every Sunday on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, Sunday evenings. And what I do is I charge $10 per card. 100% of the proceeds go to buy these groceries for the seniors. And the next day, I send over the money. The next day they're buying, actually it's the same day because of the time difference. They're buying the groceries and delivering them and then posting pictures of the people. So
That's
if anyone wants to
amazing.
help
Great.
and get a tarot reading, you can do that. I get involved in lots of Ukrainian local things here in Los Angeles. If you have that option, if you live in a big city in the East Coast, there's tons of, Ukrainian centers, and lots of immigrants went to the East Coast. So, so there's ways that you can make a difference. And I think what we don't like feeling is that feeling of helplessness, but you just have to do one thing. And then the last thing I will say in terms of magic around this, I'll share a super great tip for magic. I do a visualization where I have, I see like everything that we do is like a little drop of water. And so when we do these little drops of water, if all of us do these little drops of water, it becomes a giant tidal wave. And I imagine it's not really a tsunami, because a tsunami is just like a big rush of water, but I imagine like a Hawaii 5-0 kind of wave coming like with a big curl, right? And the wave is going over Ukraine and going to that eastern border and pushing the Russians back across their own border, pushing them out of Crimea, pushing them out of Luhansk and Donetsk and all the areas in eastern Ukraine, and pushing them back. No Ukrainian wants to take over Russia or, just get them the heck out of there and back on their own side, right? And that visualization is it's a positive one. It's a strong one. It's a cleansing and healing energy with that water. So you can do that. But also think about this. If you really want to this is magic that I've done, which is, I'm not going to go after Putin. Putin has witches casting spells protecting him. I know that. You know that. We all know that. I know that for a fact. So there's no freaking point. The guy's on his last leg anyway, whatever. And some other idiot is going to take his place. Okay, fine. He's got protection. He's got wards around him. He's got all of that. I'm not even going to bother with him. But what I can do is the average soldier doesn't have any people doing magic for him. Maybe. I say, and the average family doesn't have that kind of magic. So I say, Russian mothers, call your sons and daughters home. Now, you soldiers, you are going to want to leave and defect. You're going to want to run away. You're going to want to leave the country so you don't get conscripted. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to get confused. You're going to want to surrender. I do that work. Because that's where you can be effective. And what have we seen? I'm not saying my magic is the cause of all of it, but we have seen that.
Yes.
People fleeing the country because they're like, I don't want to be conscripted.
I'm done with this.
And people on the front making mistakes, having errors, being disobedient, surrendering, doing whatever. That is the thing that you can do. So do that. That's a great spell. It's not a harmful magic. It's not baneful magic, but it gets the job done. And that's what we need to do. So there's a little tip.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. That's really, really great.
And there's always magic in those mundane things, even if it's political, even if it's social, economical, whatever. There's always magic to be done in those areas. And I think that's where we forget. A lot of people, I know I see a lot of witches saying, oh, I don't get political. And they kind of take a step back and just wash their hands of it, but not realizing that witches, we're the ones on the fringe. We are the fringe. We're the ones that never quite fit the status quo puzzle. We never will be. We never should be. We shouldn't be the ones that are, the corporate conglomerates, the corporations, the politicians, the ones that fit into that puzzle. We're the disruptors. We're meant to be that. That's our role in the world. We're always meant to be the ones on the outside, kind of saying, "Ooh, that's not quite right. Let's poke at that a little bit and make it, make it unstable so that stability can take in." If you work with any kind of primordial goddess or any kind of primordial energy, you understand that chaos is how we get to balance. So we have to like poke the bear sometimes, so to speak.
Right? Well, I don't blame anyone. I mean, it's very fatiguing to have to intake a lot of political stuff because a lot of it is designed to make us fearful. We're really experiencing that in the States right now with lots and lots and lots on both sides of fear being put out there. It's right to be afraid, but it can be very depleting. And I'm very selective about news and what I look at and what I watch. And if I start to feel like I go, okay, I'm done for the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and that's the difference, like between awareness and immersion. You know, I think the media does want us immersed so that we do feel powerless. And that's where we have to turn it off. Like, be aware.
Yeah.
You know, no head in the sand, but how many times do you need to watch the news rehash after the commercial break what they said before the last commercial break? You know, like it doesn't serve us to be glued to the TV, and it doesn't serve the causes we care about either.
It makes us feel, I mean, I find myself feeling disempowered and so on. So I feel like I have to be very, very selective and just like take a little bite, and that's about it. I'm not going to gorge on it.
Yeah. We're not here to solve it all and do it all in one shot. We're here to take bites out of it. And
but I need to maintain my energy so that I can do the actions that will be the thing, you know, whatever that is, from practical things like yesterday we had our primary election in California, going out and vote, wearing my sticker, asking people, hey, did you vote today? You know, I'm just like that kind of nudge that will do that, you know, but, so I think if you are like a witch who's like, I can't handle it, maybe you're super empathic and it's like way too much for you. I have no judgment about that, but you know, I do say dip in as much as you can. I respect, oh my gosh, there's people that I know that can just really get into the fray. They can get in the middle of it, nonplussed. It doesn't bother them. They're ready for the fight. They don't care. That's them. I'm more like, I'm going to stand on the edge of the mosh pit. I'm not going to get in the mosh
pit. Same here. Yeah. I'll dip my toe in, I'll do my thing. And then I'm taking a step back.
I'll just dance here on the edge of the mosh pit.
Yes.
So I think we all have to look at where we are, but at the same time, you know, I think even you can always do something. You can always do something. Exactly, even if you're like, you know, that crystal new age person who's going to send some good white light to something. Great. You know, that's all you can do. That's what you do. I mean, it's not all, but you know,
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I have one last question. Kind of, you know, about the Ukraine war and the way Ukraine has outlasted, like way beyond Russia's expectations, way beyond the West's expectations. How do you think their spiritual, and this is definitely just your opinion, I know, how could you know this, but how do you feel like their spiritual connection as a people has carried them through? Like that connection to the land, or that connection to Mati Zemlya?
Yeah, exactly. So Mati Zemlya is Mother Earth, and this is it's interesting because our like idea of like Mother Earth, nature, we might think of like, think of her as being like a physical woman spirit, right? But for Ukrainians, it's not that. It's the actual land. They love the land because there's a continuity of thousands going back, you know, 10,000 years of being on this land and the land sustaining you. So there's great reverence for the land because the land is these are agricultural people. If this is where your food and your life source comes from, you are very respectful and very reverent. Reverent, yes. Did I say reverent?
Sometimes you need to get the revenants involved, you know? It's a Freudian slip, but you know.
Too much Dungeons and Dragons. All I can say. My brain. It's like a record.
We're both players too.
So they're very reverent of the land, and there's so much earth magic. Like, oh my gosh, in the book I talk all about like things that people do with the earth. My own mother, when we'd come back from a trip, she would get down on her hands and knees and kiss the ground. And I'm like, are you like so afraid of flying that this is what you do? Like not in the airport, but when we got back to our home. Right.
Okay.
And this practice of getting down and kissing your home turf is thousands of years old. And you still see people do it. I was watching a video, and when you watch prisoners being released, prisoners of war being released and coming back to Ukraine, 25% of them get down on the ground and kiss the ground. It's an old tradition. It's like the spitting.
It's giving my goosebumps. Like, that is so powerful. That's so powerful.
So when you have a people who love, this is their mother, right? The land is their mother. What do people do if they love their mother and somebody attacks their mother? What are you going to do? You're going to be like a berserk barbarian and protect your land because this is your mother.
Right.
Nobody rapes your mother. Nobody messes with your mother. I was going to say the F word. Drop an F-bomb.
It's okay.
You don't let it happen, and you will lay down your life for your mother. For sure. For sure. Right? So they care more. The Russian soldier might have some propaganda in his head who's like, I'm doing this for, we are really entitled to this. This is ours and blah, blah, blah. Because back in borders in the medieval times, this was our border. Are you kidding me? Right. Are you kidding me? Any American who buys that, I'm like, great. So then what you're saying is that all of our land should be run by Native Americans, as actually it should be. We should then cede our land to Native Americans and not have the United States here because we're the colonizers. So you're okay with that? Because if you're okay with that, you should be okay with this over here. And the people, of course, that are like, well, they're not going to go for that. Although I think that would be actually a great thing to do. But yeah, so that's why you have this, I think, a deep connection, a spiritual connection to that land that goes back thousands of years. So no way. And this is personal. It's not political. It is personal. Somebody is, just even on a practical sense, somebody comes in and says to you, oh yeah, this house is mine now. You can get out. It's my house now. What would you do? No. Right? So they have more, I would say they're deeply connected to the land in a way that a colonizer will never be. Right? So, yeah.
Well, how can people follow you? Where can they best buy Baba Yaga's Book of Witchcraft? How can they stay in touch? How can they join your tarot readings as well?
Yeah. So on all social medias, I'm Madame Pamita, Madame, Madame Pamita. You said it right the first time, Madame Pamita. I just am, West Coast California, lazy talker. So you can find me on all the socials under Madame Pamita, just one word, no spaces, no numbers, no extra letters or any of that stuff. There's lots of copycats out there. So that's where they can find me on socials. My website is Parlor of Wonders, PARLOUR of Wonders.com. That's like my headquarters where you can find everything. My workshops, my classes, my books, the beeswax candles that we make, oils and all kinds of folk magic goodies. If they want to find me get a reading, of course I do private readings. We also have other readers at the Parlor of Wonders as well. We have astrologers and numerologists and all kinds of wonderful readers doing all kinds of things, as well as tarot. They can get a reading though, if they want to just see me do readings or hang out and make a donation to help Ukraine. That happens on Sunday evenings, usually around 6 p.m. Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, 9 Eastern. Although on the first Sunday, it goes a little bit later because I teach a workshop on the first Sunday, and sometimes it could be half hour or an hour later. But if they subscribe and hit the little notifications bell, they'll be notified every time we do a live. And so if you go on YouTube, you can do that and you can make those donations, and then we deliver those groceries to the seniors. The book Baba Yaga's Book of Witchcraft is available at your favorite wherever. And I always tell people, if they want to help authors, there's a great way. If you want to buy the book, I mean, I sell signed copies, of course, at the Parlor of Wonders, if you want a personalized signed copy. But a great way that you can help an author is to go into your local bookstore. We want to help bookstores, right? So go to your local bookstore, ask them to order the book for you. There's a great benefit when you do that, because most of the time bookstore owners will go, oh, I didn't even know about that book. I'll buy an additional copy for the store. And so now your impact has doubled, because now there's one in the store that someone else can discover, and when you make your special order through your local bookstore. So I really, really, really encourage, let's keep our mom and pop bookstores alive. If you've got a mom and pop bookstore in your town or a metaphysical store in your town, let's support them, order the book through them, ask them to order it. It all is good for me either way, but, I think it's easy to go on Amazon. It's easy to go on, these other places, bookstore.com, IndieBound and so on. But, let's support our little bookstores and make those connections and keep those mom and pop stores alive,
Yes. Yeah, it's great. Well, thank you very much for joining us. This was wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, this was great.
Thank you so much.
Merry meet.
Merry part. And merry meet again.
Thank you for joining us on the Magick Kitchen podcast. Please visit my website, leandrawitchwood.com, for news, information, and more episodes.
I'm Elyse Wells, and I can be found at Seeking Numina on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and seekingnumina.com. That's Seeking, Numina.